Hello my friends, welcome back to the Burial Mound of Grudsnik, a holy place for the green tide of Massif or Cal. While the High Elves and Greenskins are likely to receive some lovin' soon, today's match is all about the Azrai and the children of the Old Ones. Wood Elves versus Lizardmen in a battle of Elder Spirits, Sotek and the Wildwood. Really dynamic, lots of ways to play it for both sides, and we're going to see some interesting picks here. I am playing as the Wood Elves, while Zach B. Sane is commanding the Serpent God Quetzalcoatl, doing his best to control both land and air with an Ark of Sotek, Tehenhauin, and the Bastiladon Hunters. A squad of flying raptors can be a pretty efficient way of eviscerating some pesky knife ears, and the Prophet of Sotek will be leading his army into battle. So for my build, I figured it was time to unleash the Forest Dragon Glade. Haven't used her in a while. One of my favorites overall, and one of the best generic lord choices in the game, bar none. She has so much versatility with her kit, Prey of Anathrema Net, the terror and beastiness that comes from the dragon itself, the breath attacks, the character sniping from range, all of it. She's just the whole package. Expecting to see a lot of infantry, so I brought a bunch of Eternal Guard and Dryads myself, but the real punching power comes from the Wardens of Sithrall, who I guess lost their Crimson Cloaks at some point. They're led by a Life Mage and have possibly the highest melee attack value of any infantry unit in the game at 59, if not, certainly in the top 5. Comes with Armor Sundering and hefty AP, so they can really deal with any threat. They do have low armor though, so they're a little bit squish. Big thing I wanted to try this game though were the Swift Shiver Shards, who trade some of their range for higher missile damage and magical attacks. Pretty solid unit versus Lizardmen, great DPS, good at killing dinos, and they can be difficult to pin down. All the way in the back are some Wild Riders, and across the way come the Children of the Old Ones. So for the Lizardmen, the meta tends to lean towards skinks of all flavors, building your army really wide and swarming the field in a tide of bodies. There's going to be a Ark of Sotek here and his creepy crawly jungle swarm buddies, which are much more effective against low armor troops. He also has 2 Chameleon Skinks, which are extremely good here. They can wreck the vast majority of the Wood Elves' low armor roster and are essentially immune to missile fire themselves because they have 40% missile resist, so that's a big deal. And yeah, it's going to be a swarm of bodies with a lot of Skinks, a lot of Red Crests, and some cold ones out on the flanks. On the far flanks are the Serpents of the Sky, the wind that hungers, Ripperdactyls on the hunt. Prophet of Sotek does not have Manticore summons, instead opting for Curse of Anra here and Pan's Impenetrable Pelt, which magical arrows will completely ignore. Now, I want you to keep an eye on these chameleons. Deepwood Scouts get revealed from stock immediately. Lizardmen have absurd spotting range, and I'm going to turn off Fire Will, because shooting chameleons with 40% missile resist is a complete waste of ammo. You are better off firing at literally anything else, and that's what's crazy about this unit. They can get this aggressive and not care. I have to ignore them and just focus on the other stuff, like the Ripperdactyls and Tehenhauin. Together, they would completely dumpster the Forest Dragon in an aerial duel, but I can support her better from the ground. So if they make a move on her, net them in place, focus fire from the Deepwood Scouts, turn those raptors into porcupines. Got one volley into the Skinks with shields, but the cold ones and the Red Crest, when they come in range, are the main threat, so I'm going to focus fire on them. They represent a lot of the killing power of the Lizardmen army, but that was a pretty disappointing second volley. A lot of those shots actually missed, which was pretty surprising, but Zach will retreat, and melee will begin in earnest. There are gaps in my line, but you can see I've left some of my infantry in reserve, Dryads, and more importantly, the Wardens of Sithrall ready to countercharge should the Skinks over-pursue, and they will. So the cohort of Sotek will run through the Dryads relatively easily, but the Wardens of Sithrall are another animal entirely, and Forest Dragon unleashing a huge soporific breath into the flank of the Red Crest, and they're going to melt away. And then just go straight into melee. Any of these Skinks I can tear out off the front line immediately, going to be a big deal. 59 melee attack, armor sundering, the Red Crest will get destroyed by the Wardens of Sithrall, and the Forest Dragon also going to carve a path right through them. But as they push up, as the infantry gets into melee, I am kind of worried about this Ark of Sotek. It's kind of a meme unit. A lot of people have made fun of it in the past, but against Wood Elves, it is legitimately good for its price point because your entire army is low armor, and it can carve through that real quick when it summons those jungle swarms. Wildwood Ranger RR up to 20 kills already, flexing on these flaccid geckos, and Prey of Anathrema Net, shutting down the aggression from those Bastiladon Hunters, pinning them in place. And the follow-up is going to be immediate. Deepwood Scouts will not survive for long with those bad boys crunching and munching in their midst, but that stupid shutter animation when they take damage, turns them into Neo, essentially, and they're going to matrix dodge like 70% of those arrows. Kind of disappointing damage coming in right now. The physical resist from Pans won't help them, but the speed will as soon as the net is done, and Cold One Riders taking that opportunity to charge in. But there's a lot back there to support. Eternal Guard, the Glade Forest Dragon, and Wild Riders, who will spring their ambush now that the Lizardmen have committed to killing off the archers. But they're going to miss their charge, which, to be honest, I don't remember missing the attack order there. Pretty sure I clicked an attack order on him like 4 times. But anyway, gonna fix that issue relatively quickly, get a rear charge in, and Terror Route going to set in for a lot of the cavalry diving into the back. But yeah, that Ark of Sotek now on top of the Wardens of Sithral, letting loose the Jungle Swarm, and they're going to nibble at my poor little toesies, and they're going to slaughter the poor Wardens. I mean, their HP bar was about, I mean, it was higher than 2/3 before that engagement started, and only a couple seconds later, they're down to about 1/3 health. So they're getting dumpstered there. Cold One Riders are not having a great time, though. They've overcommitted for sure. Forest Dragon munching on them, and the cohort of Sotek gonna slice the heads off a few Dryads and soon will push through. Refuse to Die will make that a palatable engagement for them. But there's a lot of mobility on the Lizardmen side of things, and even their infantry has more mobility than mine, so they're just sending everything they can into the back line to tie it down, to kill off the Deepwood Scouts, and slaughter them for good. Because once I lose my missile fire presence, then killing the Dino is going to become a lot more difficult, and Tehenhauin and the Colossal Hunters can then focus on the Forest Dragon itself. And if she's isolated and doesn't have any range fire to protect her, then that's where things are going to get very scary. Deepwood Scouts did manage to escape, though, without catastrophic losses, and they're firing in for now. Nice charge coming downhill from the Cold One Riders, but some of them will Terror Route. At least for the Raptors, it's starting to feel like the end of the Cretaceous period, and that Forest Dragon is the asteroid impactor, bringing extinction to the dinos. Wild Riders aren't prey either. They've swept up this dive into the rear very nicely, and here comes the big Chungus, the angry Ankylosaurus, goring, poisoning, and stomping everything in its path. Its rampage, leaving smears and bits of dead and dying elves in its wake, and it will become even more nightmarish with the Colossal Hunter Ripperdactyl ROR slamming into the rear. Now, they are bonus versus large. They don't have that bonus versus infantry, but it's relatively irrelevant. They have ridiculous stats, and the Eternal Guard on the front lines getting smashed. Now, the Chameleons had to charge after the Deepwood Scouts to try to tie them down, and they're actually quite good in that role, too, because they're a little bit faster. They've got the poison attacks. They can fire from point-blank range, but they ran in, and the Forest Dragon and the Wild Riders were able to catch up and Terror Route them off. Now, Tehenhauin is still alive and still in good shape. Colossal Hunters are still alive, and the Ark of Sotek is pretty much full HP. So what the Lizardmen are going to try to do here is follow up the attack behind that cohort of Sotek and their Refuse to Die ability and try to get rid of all the infantry support. Once the Eternal Guard and the Wardens of Sithral are dead, then the Lizardmen are going to be in a much better position to isolate that Forest Dragon and kill it off for good. But the dive into the rear didn't kill off the Deepwood Scouts. They committed a lot to trying to kill them. The Wild Riders, the prey of Aneth Rama, and all that play has made it difficult to get in there and murder them all. And because the Cav is all pretty much dead now after that last net and a nice charge from the Forest Dragon, it means that the mobility for the Lizardmen is heavily impacted at this point in the battle, and that means that the Deepwood Scouts should be able to survive and get a lot more shots in. That's a lot of effective HP Lizardmen will lose to that focus fire. The Swarm of Sotek, though, those Jungle Swarm, are severely messing up the Wardens, and you can see them just melt away. Look at their HP bar, down to almost 0 at this point, and Terror Route is imminent for the Wood Elves that are down the bottom of the burial mound. Now, the Chameleon Skinks have taken the high ground, but does it really matter? Yeah, you've got the high ground, but there's only a handful of models left on them. They're getting swarmed by Eternal Guard, and they are routing, and the only place they have to run is upwards, and there will only be a handful of them left when it's all said and done. And the Forest Dragon is still the biggest threat to the children of the old ones. The Life Mage and the Forest Dragon are both still intact and ready to fight. And even if the Forest Dragon did drop low, there will be heals going her way. Earthbloods, regrowths, all that stuff is very nice. But the Lizardmen have completely cleared up all the infantry on the bottom of that slope, and they're pushing forward, ready to get in this final engagement. Tehenhauin possibly over pursuing a little bit, and with that attack, you can see the balance bar swing, Tehenhauin dropping down below half. Shield of Thorns gonna give some nice buffs alongside Earthblood to both the Wild Riders and the Forest Dragon, who have jumped into the Vanguard to take on this swarm of Sotek that is cresting this hill, trying to push upwards, now fighting in the forest, which won't be good for the Forest Dragon or for the angry Ankylosaurus. Jungle Storms pop for the third time this battle. Shield of Thorns on the Wild Riders, giving them additional physical resist and weapon damage. And they're going to charge in from the rear and precipitate a mass rout. Tehenhauin breaks off. The only thing that remains are the Refuse to Die cohort of Sotek. The Red Crests, who will fight to the end because they are unbreakable, but it won't be enough to carry the day. The Wood Elves will take it. And there were two factors, I think, that played a really big role in preventing the Ripperdactyls and the cavalry from destroying those Deepwood Scouts that kept them online and made it a simpler engagement for the Wood Elves overall. It was that Prey of Anathrema net from the Glade, which, as we know, from its inception has been just godlike. It has always been extremely, extremely good at shutting down enemy mobility. And the other was the Wild Riders that were in that ambush forest in the back. And as soon as the Cold Ones committed, they were able to come out, and even though they missed their charge, which was, I guess, a micro mistake on my part, they were still able to make a huge impact there, get a lot of kills, and kill off a lot of high-value threats as well. I think both builds are good examples of roughly what you'll see out of the Lizardmen and the Wood Elves in this matchup. There are multiple ways to play it, for sure, but I think for the most part, people like to go for skink builds with the Lizardmen here, because they're able to just swarm the field, they're able to get a bunch of bodies on the field. Skinks are very quick, they're good at shutting down enemy range play, and they can deal a decent amount of damage too. The Chameleons are obviously a great pick. One thing that you typically won't see is the Ark of Sotek, although it did quite well here. It got over 80 kills, and was a big part of the reason why the Wardens of Sith roll got beat up so badly in the first place. But the double solar engine play is typically a more common pick in this matchup. Good for killing archers, infantry, cav, and trees with their flaming damage when the time comes. Stegodons, Carnosaurs, Crocsgores, and Dreadsaurians are terrible here. The ever-looming threat from AP missile fire makes them untenable at best, but a bunch of cheap, fast infantry with Cold One support is a cost-efficient way to overwhelm the Azrai and test their micro. And it did. It was challenging to keep it all off my archers, but had enough tools to do so, and ended up being an interesting battle overall. GG to Zach. More from our matches coming very soon.